I was watching both of those segments while we were away. I was watching the Dana Lash piece and the second piece on Kerry Guard, and I got to tell you what an absolute honor it is to be playing on the same team as these people. Uh, the thing that I thought most look, I'm not a real, if not, I'm nothing like Coley, and he's a gun expert. I think I can determine which end the bullet comes out. If I'm pretty sure I can get that right, and I've still got all 10 fingers and all 10 toes after owning an AR-15 and a 45 ACP. But I'm certainly not a gun guy. The reason I wanted to be part of this network so much was because the National Rifle Association isn't just about guns. It's about maintaining these fundamental freedoms against an onslaught that's not coming at us with guns. It's coming at us through movies and television and all the rest, all the pop culture, this giant swan song of anti-Americanism and idiocy that's being generated just not too far behind my shoulder here. But let's leave the confines of beautiful downtown Los Angeles and travel across the country to the Big Apple, to New York City. There's been two plays, theatrical plays there, that I think are kind of newsworthy for interesting reasons. Let's start with the first one, which is called Building the Wall. Building the Wall is a play that's been basically been on for a couple weeks now, I guess. And Building the Wall, now you can see a couple of pictures of it. Building the Wall is unfortunately going to be ending a little bit early. It's supposed to run through first week in July. It's closing now because nobody's going to see it. But let me tell you about Building the Wall. We just saw some stills there. Here's the cast. So let me just read to you what the New York Times describes this play as. This is the New York Times description of Building the Wall. Ready? Quote, "The political thriller, according to the Times, follows a history professor named Gloria who interviews a former security officer named Rick. It's 2019, and President Donald Trump has been removed from office after a terrorist attack in Times Square forces him to declare martial law and place Muslims and Mexicans in containment camps, which eventually turn into killing chambers. Gloria visits Rick in prison, where he explains his hand in the deadly terror." Now, what are we going to do about this? First of all, we have to say on some level, certainly it's good news. It's some sense from the people of New York City that this play is closing a month early, because basically you've got this situation that's just nothing but a lecture. It's just a giant baseball bat across the head. The guy who wrote the play said that he wrote it right after the election and that he wrote it in a week. But looking at some of the things in this play, I don't think he spent a week on it. It seems like he spent a lot less time than that. But here's the thing I want to point out to the writer of this play, to the cast members of this show, and to everybody else who's seen it, and to everybody else who buys into this death camps are coming kind of thing. I'm going to say this slowly. You're not going to listen because you don't want to listen, but I'm going to say it slowly again anyway. If the time ever comes when Americans are being put into concentration camps or death camps, the first people stopping this kind of mass murder will be American citizens with their own guns. In other words, it will be members like the people who are the members of the NRA. If they start putting people into concentration camps, it's not going to be the actors that's going to stop it. It's not going to be hashtags. It's not going to be buttons or pins, and it's not going to be award shows. It's going to be the American people maintaining their freedom and their independence and exercising their Second Amendment right to do what the Second Amendment was designed for, which is namely to physically prevent this kind of thing. And by the way, you miserable low-life projection people who project all of your internal evils onto us, let me make this crystal clear. It doesn't matter if it's a concentration camp for white people or a concentration camp for Christians. It doesn't matter if it's a concentration camp for Mexicans or for Muslims or for gays or for transsexual people. It doesn't matter. If there's concentration camps that are about to be set up, or in the process of being set up, if people are being rounded up in America, it will be the people like us in the NRA who are going to stop it, and we would even do it for you. We'd even do it for you. So that's how fast the news gets here. They're already knocking on my door. They want an explanation. We are not here to fool around. Okay? So when these so-called concentration camps come, they're going to come from where they always come. They're going to come from collectivists. They're going to come from collectivists like the guy who wrote this play. They're going to come from people who think that the government knows best, because only the government has the power to round people up and to put them behind barbed wire. You see how it works? So just as a small tidbit of information for your future playwriting failures, You might just want to think about this. The people who you are claiming are the ones that are going to round up people, are the people who are saying the government, which would be doing the rounding up, is too powerful and we'd like it to stop. And if we can't ungrow the government, then the very least we can do is do what we would have had happen in the Soviet Union, what would have happened in Nazi Germany, what would have happened in China if those people hadn't been disarmed. Namely, when the people in the government start coming to take people away for concentration camps, we may not be able to stop them from taking our families, but we can certainly make sure that not quite as many of them are going home as who came out. 6 million Jews in Nazi Germany. How many people actively in the SS at that time? Maybe 50,000? You have to unarm people, disarm people before you can put them in concentration camps, you idiot. Really, if you had an education, I'd feel a little better about this, but you don't get a chance to put this kind of nonsense out there and expect people to just swallow it. Even New Yorkers aren't buying this. So let's move on to our final little story about going to see the theater in New York City. Going to the theater, one of the things about New York that's actually kind of nice, there are some nice things about that city. I was born there, by the way. It was pretty much downhill after that. That was 1959. The city's been on a slide, honestly, since that day. Yes, I was born in New York City. But there's another play. And one of the things about New York that's kind of nice is they do theater in the park. They do outdoor plays in the park, and they often do Shakespeare. Well, they just did a production of Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare. And they tried to make, as they often do with Shakespeare, update the story. So basically, they set it in the present day. And as you may recall from your history books, because I know our audience out there has read some history, Julius Caesar did not end up in a very happy place. On the 15th of March, he was stabbed to death by other members of the Senate in a sort of a coup, a sort of a cabal led by his friend Brutus. And so the highlight of this play, that Julius Caesar play written by William Shakespeare, is when Caesar is stabbed by his friends. Well, in this production in New York City, we're set in the present day, and guess who Caesar looks like? Just guess. Look, there's the modern production of Julius Caesar. There's a man in a blonde outfit who looks suspiciously like the President of the United States being violently stabbed to death. The blood is everywhere. It's obviously Donald Trump. And the reason we know it's obviously Donald Trump is because the actor who plays him plays Donald Trump in just about every other production to come out of New York City. His name is Greg Henry. Greg Henry had a quote talking about this play. And he, as I say, he's played Trump before. So basically what he said is this. Greg Henry said, the idea for me was to try and to do some things that would represent and show you, and I have great costumes and wigs that show you that this could be Trump, Henry told Backstage. But I'm also trying to bring in the larger knowledge of tyrants. It's sort of a tyrant's greatest hits in the way that the speeches and in the nature of the ego and the belief that one man is more important, is above the law, is the law, those tyrannical beliefs in terms of how to deal with power. Now, Greg, there's only one problem with your theory, and it's a little tiny problem. You might want to pay attention. The one problem with your theory is that tyrants are able to dictate the law, and tyrants come to power through violent means such as coups in the Senate. Unfortunately for your theory, Donald Trump was elected by the American people using the rules of the American electoral system. Unfortunately for your theory, Donald Trump is constrained by the law and has always been. I think it's insane that some judge somewhere can issue some kind of a decree, some kind of an order that holds the president's foreign policy in check. But that is what's happened with this travel suspension. It's happened twice. Some judge somewhere has basically said, no, we don't think this is illegal. And this tyrant who you talk about has said, I don't think this is fair, but he has abided by the law the way he has been abiding by the law. And so I think you don't really understand this word tyranny. I know you use the word tyrant, but I don't think you understand what it means, Greg. I don't think you have a clue, because if you did, you wouldn't make stupid statements like this. It drives a fellow right out, trying to deal with all of this madness and insanity. Listen, folks, if you want to understand Hollywood people, this is all you have to know. These are people whose entire education comes from movies. They think they can outrun explosions. They think that guns can be silenced by putting a pillow over them. All they believe in is all the stuff that they've learned from movies. It just ain't so. It's not so, Greg. The real world is different. The real world is better. The real world is harder. And so you've got stupid people trying to act smart because they play smart people when they're not being stupid. That'll do it for this edition of Hot Mic with Bill Whittle. It's just enough material out there to power a dynamo. We will be back on Monday with an entirely new show of New Outrageous. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next week on NRATV.